Good morning, family. It's your boy Big L with another Foreign Blast, man. I want to warn you ahead of time that this video may be a little longer than some of the other videos that I've made. And the only reason that it's going to be longer is because of the importance of the material that I'm going to be covering this morning. And I say this morning because it's early morning. I woke up with this topic uh, heavy in my thoughts because I hear this thrown out often to people, man. And I hear people often refer to it in discussions and they say it. But I often see people when they're communicating this particular topic struggle with articulating what exactly this particular thing is. And because of that struggle, it often leaves people who are unfamiliar with it sitting back bewildered, confused, frustrated, and a little pissed off. And the reason why they're often pissed off is because they feel like we're blaming an external situation or system instead of taking responsibility internally for our current state. And this particular topic is going to be one uh, covering white supremacy. Specifically, I'm going to define what white supremacy is, and then I'm going to cover three questions. Okay? What does it mean to say that white supremacy is a system? What does it mean to say that white supremacy is historically based? What does it mean to say that white supremacy is a system of exploitation? Okay? Three questions. So stick with me, and I'm going to point these joints out as we go along. And it's imperative that we understand what white supremacy is and what white supremacy isn't. Okay? So three things. I'm going to explain what does it mean to say it's a system? What does it mean to say white supremacy is historically based? And what does it mean to say white supremacy is a system of exploitation? But I think it's imperative to start with this quote, man, from this brother who blows my mind every time I hear him speak or read his words. And that would be Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. Okay? What Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. says is a quote that many people know and it's been out there for such a long time, and it sums up kind of where we are in regards to understanding racism. And what Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. says, he says, if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. If you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think you understand will confuse you. And as we go further into this discussion, man, uh, you'll begin to see particular areas where there's a level of confusion. And I want to make it clear to you guys, man. First, thank you for taking the time to watch this. I appreciate all you listeners. I appreciate the ones who don't agree, the trolls, all those people, and the people who support, who have subscribed and share these videos that I'm doing. I appreciate you sincerely. I want to hear your feedback. Continue to send it in, man. Let's build a medium where we can discuss and chop these things up for the betterment of our people. Let me dig in. White supremacy is a historically based, institutionally perpetuated system of exploitation, oppression of continents, nations, peoples of color by white peoples and nations of uh, the European continent, I'm sorry, for the purpose of maintaining and defending, here's the reason for white supremacy, okay? For defending a system of wealth, power, and privilege. And sometimes you'll hear me oftentimes, man, repeat things back and forth. And I'm not repeating it because I'm trying to insult your intelligence or act like you ain't hear what the hell I said. I'm trying to repeat it to make sure that you have grasped it, okay? So let me explain this again. Let me give you the definition for white supremacy one more time. White supremacy is an institutionally based, historically perpetuated system of exploitation and oppression of continents, nations, and peoples of color by white people and nations of European continent for the purpose of maintaining and defending system of wealth, power, and privilege. Okay? Now, I know there was some things in there, man, that you might have heard that already raised your eyebrow and you're already feeling some type of way you may not agree with, but just continue to listen to the rest of this before you start throwing daggers and begin to assault, this particular discussion. Listen to the whole joint all the way through, and then we can discuss it, man. You can always reach me somehow, and I'm willing to dialogue about this because I'm still learning, as you should be. Now, there's three things that I'm gonna cover in this particular discussion, man, and I don't want it to be incredibly lengthy, but I don't want it to be so short where there's vital pieces and parts of this joint that is left out. It's imperative, man, that you get this and you grasp it. Uh, Three things. What does it mean to say that white supremacy is a system? What does it mean to say white supremacy is historically based? What does it mean to say that white supremacy is a system of exploitation? Okay, and it's very, very, very important for people to get where I'm coming from. Now, before I go any further, let me address some of the white folk who may be viewing this, who may hear about it, whatever the case may be. Let me have a discussion with my white people for just a moment. These conversations can be rough for white people to hear. Some feel that they are being unfairly targeted, or that we, or more specifically, your boy Big L, are preaching hate or racism. I preach nor advocate either of those. Yet let me say this to those who attempt to label me or other blacks who speak up and out directly regarding black issues. Blacks cannot be racist. Blacks cannot be racist. Now, we can discriminate, we can be bigots, but racist we cannot be. And here's the right reason why we can't be racist. Racism is a group-based dynamic. It means an empowered, an empowered power relationship. Here's some more about it. Let me explain this to you. Racism presupposes, the ability to control a significant segment of a population, whether it be economically, politically, uh, socially, by imposing laws and restrictions on the lives of the people that they're trying to remove power from. Blacks have never had the capacity to do that on a collective scale. But it's now politically uh, incorrect to speak about black issues because nobody wants to hear about it. It's difficult to get folk to sit around, whether it be all blacks or black and white and blacks and other, races, to sit down and have discussions regarding race, man. And I think that's been one of the big hindrances and one of the chief tools of white supremacy. Okay. One more thing before I dive into today's topic rather. When I address black issues, black problems, I will be open, I'll be honest, I'll be direct, and without compromise. And this is the key that I want you to hear, man, when you listen to all Big L's videos. I'm encouraging love and unity amongst blacks before we attempt to unify with others, before we attempt to unify with anybody else. That's the purpose of what I do. Okay? So let's dig into this topic, man, white supremacy, because this might be a topic, man, that many of us are unfamiliar with or don't have a firm understanding and firm foundation on. So hopefully this video can be helpful to people who may be new to the Black empowerment movement, who may be new and trying to grasp what it really is. Number one, what does it mean to say that white supremacy is a system? Because when I say white supremacy, white people often hear that and say that I'm calling all of them white supremacists or I'm calling all of them racist. Nope. And this segment is really important to understand because I'm speaking, when I say white supremacy, I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about the system. Okay? The most common mistake people make when they talk about racism is to think of it as a collection of prejudices and individual acts of discrimination. They don't see it as a system, a spider web like system interlocking, reinforcing institutions, whether it be economic, military, legal, education, religion, and cultural. As a system, racism and white supremacy affects every aspect of the life of a black person in this country. And I'm speaking in an American Western context. Okay? It affects every aspect of a black person's life in this country. It's imperative that you get that. It's it's so important. And here's why. By not seeing white supremacy as a system, people often personalize it or individualize racist acts. Okay? For example, they will reduce racist police behavior to a few bad apples. Or they'll say stuff like, it's not all cops, it's some cops, who need to be removed, rather than seeing it as white supremacy existing in police departments all over the country and is basic in this society. The mistake has real consequences when you make those type of assumptions. Refusing to see police brutality as a part of white supremacy system and that the system needs to be changed means that the brutality can continue because you're looking at the branches of the problem instead of dealing with the root of the problem. The root of the problem behind Eric Gardner being killed, Mike Brown being killed, my brother Chad being killed, it is not a few bad damn apples. The problem is white supremacy, the system that these institutions have been built on. And that's imperative. The need to recognize white supremacy as a system is one reason the term white supremacy has been so useful. As much as people may not like it, it's been far more useful than the term racism. And here's the reason. They refer to the same problem, but the problem with the purpose of using racism, I'm sorry, the reason to use white supremacy compared to using the term racism, some people think of racism as just a matter of prejudice. Okay, so that's why you often hear people try to define racism, and the definition is so subjective. Like it changes based on the weather and how that person's feeling at the damn moment. But when you define it as white supremacy, there's no change in it because white supremacy defines a power relationship, flat out. The term racism often leads to damn dead end debates on about whether a particular remark or action by an individual white person was really racist or not. We achieve and have a clearer understanding of racism if we analyze how certain actions, okay, relates to a system. So instead of looking at those individual acts as separate entities or separate things, you look at them from the context of a piece of a web in an interlocking system known as white supremacy. But I'm going to be honest with you. The term white supremacy gives white people a clear choice of supporting or opposing a system instead of being bogged down in claims of being anti-racist, based on their personal behavior. It's very important, man, that I've made it a concerted effort to stop using the word racism, but to use white supremacy. Because again, racism and racist, all those terms are so damn subjective, just like minority, they're so damn ambiguous. But there's no dancing around with white supremacy. There's no dancing around with that definition. Okay? Let me move to part two. Okay? Number two, rather. What does it mean to say white supremacy is historically based? Okay? What does it mean to say white supremacy is historically based? Every nation has a creation myth or origin myth, which would be the story that people are taught in their particular cultures or schools or whatever the case may be, on how a nation has begun. And most of you who live in America have been taught a myth, have been taught a lie. We've been painted or given this painting of this picture of the founding fathers being some loving men who loved this country and loved people and who held strong Christian principles. And, you know, they were always looking to do the right thing. When the reality is, most of the founding fathers, if not all of them, was some racist, evil terrorists. And see, now, you know, the term terrorist has been, quote unquote, popularized by the white supremacist media. And we only think of terrorists as folks who strap bombs on their damn back and go and blow things up because of a religious ideology. When the reality is, when you go into a place that is not your own and you launch systematic attacks to take over that particular place, that would be terrorists. And those folk who came from another country to do those things to this particular country, to the people who are already here, that's terrorists. Most of your founding fathers, presidents, were some of the biggest white supremacist, racist cats who ever lived in this damn country. Okay? I'm not trying to give them no damn benefit of the doubt. I'm not giving no pats on the back. I'm not doing no damn disclaimers. That's the reality of. Our particular creation myth says the United States was began with Christopher Columbus's so-called discovery of America. It continued with brave pilgrims won its independence from England with the American Revolution, and then expanded westward until it became an enormous, rich country you see today. That's a flat-out damn lie. Now, let me tell you why it's a lie. It leaves out three key facts, okay, about the birth and growth of the United States. Those facts that I'm going to give you in just a second demonstrate that white supremacy is fundamental to the existence of this country. Okay? Number one, okay, the United States is a nation created by military conquest in several different stages. And I'm just going to give you a couple because I think it's imperative that you understand. When I use the term terrorist, it's important that you put how this country was created in its proper context. The United States is a nation created by military conquest. The first stage was a European seizure of the lands inhabited by the indigenous people who are already here. So they came through. Before the European invasion, there were between 9 and 18 million indigenous people in North America. But by the end of the Indian War, there were 250,000 in what is now, at that point in time, called the United States. That's imperative. So you get this impression that these great European people came looking for freedom, and they were trying to get away from the tyranny that from their own homelands. But the reality was they were looking to come and make a come up. They were trying to gain some stuff, to get some stuff. And they didn't give a damn of who's back or who they killed, who they raped, who they stole from, who they robbed from to get it. So when you think of this country, put it in its proper context. Now, is this a great country still? Absolutely, it's still a great country. But being a great country doesn't mean that this country wasn't built on some damn bullshit. So let's keep it 100. Let's be honest with each other about this type of stuff. Another aspect, the United States could not have developed economically as a nation without enslaved labor. So when we begin to think about the peculiar institution known as slavery, you got to place it in its proper context again. And you notice I say that often, proper context, because so much of our history and so much of what we have been conditioned to think have been bits and pieces of a puzzle, and you don't have the damn puzzle board to place these pieces on. But now that you have an understanding of what white supremacy really is, you're going to have the pieces to put it on that damn, the puzzle base to put these pieces on so you can actually get a clearer understanding. This country was built on enslaved labor. Slavery was more about money than it was about the hating of a particular color. Understand that. There were slaves for economic prosperity, not because they just hated niggas. When agriculture and industry began to grow in the colonial period, a tremendous labor shortage took place. There was not enough white workers who had come from Europe and who were European invaders. They couldn't put, there wasn't enough indigenous people and white workers to work those lands to build that particular agricultural system based off of trying to get and build this country up economically. It was enslaved Africans who provided the labor force that made this country what it is. That it was enslaved Africans who built this country under an oppressive, evil, vile system of white supremacy. Number 3, okay? Remember that. I said we were going to deal with 3 things, man. It was imperative that we talked about 3 things. I've already covered what does it mean to say that white supremacy is a system. What does it mean to say white supremacy is historically based? We just covered that. Now moving into number 3, and this is where it gets really good and it gives us a better understanding of it. What does it mean to say white supremacy is a system of exploitation? Because we gotta understand how it has been exploiting people for their gain to develop and maintain wealth, power, and privilege. Those are the 3 things, the 3 objectives that white supremacy is looking to gain: wealth, power, and privilege. That's what it's looking to get. That's why it does all these things. That's why it had the black codes. That's why it had Jim Crow. That's why the Reconstruction era went the way it was. It was looking to maintain and develop wealth, power, and privilege. Now, part 3, what does it mean to say white supremacy is a system of exploitation? The roots, again, we deal with roots a lot. The roots of racism or white supremacy in this country lie in establishing economic exploitation by stealing it, by creating laws to make sure you have the resources and human labor. But here's the key: then justifying that exploitation by institutionalizing the inferiority of its victims. Okay? The first application of white supremacy, man, by Europeans who control the U.S. society was against indigenous people, also known as Indians. Then came blacks, originally as slaves, and later and continuously right now exploited as wage labor. Okay? Then it was followed by what we're seeing now taking place in a lot of parts of the country, followed by the Mexicans, who lost their means of survival when they lost their land holdings and also became wage slaves. Okay? In short, and I keep talking about the economic aspect because understanding the problem and the nature of the problem of being white supremacy, now we can begin to apply solutions, and that solution would be Black economics and group economics, which I'll discuss in future videos, man. In short, white supremacy and economic power are twins. White supremacy and economic power are twins. And when I say that, they were both born together. The United States is the first nation in the world to be born racist. The United States was the first nation in this world to be born racist. South Africa came next with apartheid. And now, also, America was the first country to be born capitalist. It's not a coincidence. It's not by accident. In this country, as history shows, capitalism and racism go hand in hand. They're homies, best friends. They go hand in hand. In the case of racism, the supremacist ideology that anchors the system is white supremacy. Okay? Racism is a white supremacist ideology backed by systematic power and reinforced through violence. Now, I think this is where people begin to feel some type of way. But if you look back across our history, even a European whitewashed, Americanized history, you'll see how violence has been used time and time again to get what this country needs. And if you know anything about violence, and particularly about wars, there's a certain level of economic prosperity that takes place when wars kick off. That's just what it is. But we so often speak in terms of who is and isn't racist. Again, then we're treating racism as an individual state of being rather than a system of power. Racism is not merely a personal attitude or an insult. Okay, it's not just an attitude towards blacks. It's not just calling blacks nigger and things along those lines. Instead, it's a racial system of power maintained by violence. And oftentimes, as we see in the cases of a lot of our black males being killed, a lot of our black women being brutalized, a lot of our black children being miseducated, that violence often goes unpunished. And the reason why those acts of violence often go unpunished is because it's protected by a dominant system of power. Therefore, an individual can be perpetuating this system without even knowing they're even being conscious of their actions. So one of the things that I often say, and I know it makes some people uncomfortable, is I don't think all white people are racist. I don't think all white people are white supremacists. But I do believe, particularly the whites who I don't know, I consider them racist or suspected racist white supremacists. Until I'm able to build some sort of relationship with them, I think it's imperative for black folk to treat them or even mentally and subconscious or consciously within themselves look at white people as suspected racist white supremacists. Because here's the thing, we as black people, we're looked at as suspects wherever we go. That is the definition of stereotype. Stereotype would be suspecting and assuming that somebody is something other than what they really are. And that's the nature of putting us in a place where we begin to rationalize and understand that no, all white people are not racist. No, all white people are not white supremacists. But those that we don't know and we don't have relationships with, friendships with, should be considered as suspected white supremacist racists until they show us otherwise. And I'm sure that makes white people uncomfortable. I'm sure they feel some type of way about that. They'll be okay. They'll absolutely be okay. Historically speaking, though, black people in the United States have not created a system of power based on black superiority, nor have we perpetuated violence as a way of establishing or maintaining power. The existing racial system of power is anchored by white superiority, whether it be conscious or subconscious, not black superiority, man. It's just not the way it is. And here's the kicker. Here's the key. White supremacy, the true underlying problem of racism and racist ideology, does not become the focus of racial investigation. That the entire infrastructure of American society, is based upon and emulates from a Western canon that European Americas raped the continent and decimated its indigenous peoples, instituted a system of society and governmental sanction, Chantal, slavery for over 3 centuries, that the present population that is deemed white is still benefiting from these systems and institutions. Unfortunately, all those points are often ignored. So when I say that I consider white folks who I don't have a relationship with and who not met as suspected racists or suspected white supremacists, it's because of what this country has been built on. This country has been built on, man, a system of society and governmental sanctioned slavery for over 3 centuries that has white people in a position, whether they are good, fair, loving white folks who, care about everybody, who despise racism on every level, whether they despise it, whether they consider themselves an abolitionist or they fight for racial injustice. If they're white, they have benefited from white supremacy. And that's where you would get your definition of white privilege. That's where you would get it. And I think it's difficult for people to grasp what white supremacy is. I think it takes a level of acknowledgement, takes a level of examination, whether it be internal or external, where you begin to look at things in a different light. But I don't have these discussions about white supremacy to try to convince white folks that white supremacy exists. I don't try to get them on the same page. I don't speak or talk to other folk, and particularly white people in this particular context, as a way of trying to get them to understand that there's a system in this world that has been built to make sure that they maintain wealth, power, and privilege. I don't try to convince them of that. I don't try to convince them that the laws on the books, which many people tend to call fair and just somehow, some way, I don't know how, were put in place to make sure that whites maintained wealth, power, and privilege. That the education system in itself has been created and designed and put in place to make sure that whites maintain wealth, power, and privilege. That your government has been set up to maintain wealth, power, privilege. That everything about this society and this world that we live in is based on a white supremacy construct. That's what it is. Now, here's some things that I want to discuss before I close out. You, black person who is now understanding what white supremacy is, explaining to you what white supremacy is in no way, shape, or form uh, nullifies personal responsibility on your part. Describing what white supremacy uh, is not an attempt to somehow push off responsibility for the many of the issues that Black America is facing. It's not an attempt to point a finger at some boogeyman to get them feeling as if uh, we don't want to be held accountable for what we do in Black America. That's the furthest thing from the truth. When we talk as Black folk with an understanding of white supremacy, when we attack a particular issue such as unemployment, as we're combating unemployment, we're looking at unemployment from the stance of, okay, what is it built on? It's built on white supremacy. So understanding what the foundation of a situation is that's oppressing you helps you to fight and combat that particular issue that is built on. So it makes no sense for me to be just swinging randomly at unemployment when I'm not able to attack the foundation of what unemployment is, the problem of unemployment in Black America, which is white supremacy. The system has been put in place to set up to make sure that whites, whether they understand or acknowledge white supremacy or not, are able to acquire and maintain wealth, power, and privilege. So when I look at the unemployment rate, when I'm encouraging people to fight unemployment and look at it from its proper context, I say, okay, A, understand what this unemployment situation is built on and what its intended purposes was for blacks. Okay, so with that understanding of how white supremacy has put that in place, now we can begin to put things in place to combat that. So how we combat unemployment with a white supremacy foundation? We combat that with Black economics or group economics by building our own social economic infrastructure and building our own communities where we're no longer in codependent relationships with a white supremacy government slash society. It's not in no way, shape, or form blaming white supremacy for it and pointing a finger and placing all the responsibility and blame upon them. No, it's making sure that I put all of the variables to a particular situation in that particular equation in order to be able to solve the problem. When I look at teen pregnancy or the abortion rate within Black America, I don't just simply say we need more damn programs and more money to combat that issue. I have to be able to look at every possible variable when I'm coming up with the solution to a particular equation. And when I leave out white supremacy, I'm doing those who are in need of a solution that lasts forever. I'm leaving them and placing them in a situation where that situation will never truly and fully end. I'm essentially putting a band-aid over a gunshot wound. So we got to make sure that we are placing these things in those proper context, man, to get a full understanding of those particular issues. When I talk about teen pregnancy and the abortion rate amongst young Black females, I don't leave out the fact that there's a large demographic of Black men who are absent from their daughters' lives. I don't leave that variable out. I don't leave out how propaganda in the media has made casual sex, whatever the hell that is, seem like it's the good thing to do, that we are supposed to have sex without some level of commitments to the person we're having sex with. I don't leave that variable out. So why would I leave white supremacy, the foundation of that particular situation, out? Never looking to place all of the blame on white supremacy so we don't have to do any work ourselves, Black America, to get ourselves out of the particular rut that we're in. And it's very, very, and it can be, man. And I know for many people, when they hear uh, folk discuss and talk about white supremacy, that they feel some type of way. They feel, particularly those, man, who, particularly those in Black America who have uh, achieved some level of success, who have a couple dollars, who haven't been in trouble, whose life it seems to be pretty great. Those upper to middle class black folk who seems to be once it seems to be that once some of these black folks get a couple dollars or they get some level of success, there's this immediate clipping of the cord that connects them to black people as a collective, and they begin to look at things on an individualistic basis. Individualism becomes their modus operandi, that they feel like that. So what they do is they often become what I like to call bootstrappers. And those are the people who feel like they've made it based off of their own hard work, their own sweat, blood, and tears, that no one helped them get to where they are, that they don't have to give back to Black America, that there's no reason for that. And I think that is a tool used to keep black people in that type of divisive mentality where it's this issue and there's this gulf between successful blacks, not all, successful blacks and blacks who are trying to be successful. I think that was a tool of white supremacy to intentionally continue to divide us and distract us from what they're actually doing amongst us. So it's important to have a collective mentality. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to always be with us. It doesn't mean everybody's going to push with us, man, to fight for uh, building Black empowerment, to build a strong socioeconomic infrastructure that they're going to be on the same page with us to build. That's not reality. Everybody's not going to come with us. Everybody's not joining in, and that's okay. That's okay. But Harriet Tubman, I'm gonna close with this statement, man. Harriet Tubman made this statement once. Harriet Tubman said, I freed 1,000 slaves, but I would have freed 1,000 more if they knew they were slaves. I freed 1,000 slaves, but I would have freed 1,000 more if they knew they were slaves. Now that right there gets you to thinking. This has been your boy Big L, man. Thank you for tuning in, man. Share this, leave your comments. Whether you agree or disagree, I'm willing to dialogue with you. But what I won't be doing, I won't be arguing. I won't be allowing a bunch of foolishness to take place where you're just being flat out ignorant. But if you're willing to dialogue, I'll dialogue with you. Okay? And I appreciate you guys for tuning in, man. This has been your boy Big L with another Forum Blast dealing with white supremacy. Take care of yourself. Black first.